What's up, everybody? It's Mark from Team Primetime, and today I am doing something, a little different. I'm very usually a big fan of. I'm going to play a land, and I'm going to pass. I'm going to do everything on my opponent's turn. But today I embrace sorcery speed. I'm going to embrace the Blood Crypts, and I'm going to embrace doing some mid-range stuff today. So I'm playing Rakdos Mid, the de facto mid-range deck in the Pioneer format, and I'm just kind of playing it kind of vanilla. So I'm doing all the normal stuff. There's nothing really crazy in the mana base. Two Bankbusters, two Graveyard Trespassers, three Shellies. I guess I'll go over like the flex slots. I think to me there's really about 8 flex slots in the deck, and I'm going to use those to really try a little bit of everything. We've got an Invoke Despair, Liliana the Veil, Sheoldred's Edict, Misery Shadow, Go for the Throat, Power Word Kill, Dreadbore, and Kroxa, Titan of Death's Hunger. These are all cards that are very interchangeable in the Rakdos shell, and I just kind of wanted to get a feel for trying all of them because if I'm gonna play the deck, I'm gonna play a little variety. Sideboard, you got the basic stuff. If you want to hate the hand and the graveyard a little bit, we got 2 Duresses, 2 Go Blanks. We got 2 K commands, the ultimate Rakdos mid-range flex card. 1 Noxious Grasp, 1 Rending Volley, kind of a split for all the white decks really, and then Noxious Grasp has some additional flex to hit planeswalkers. Path of Peril and Extinction Events, pretty solid board wipes. Extinction Event very good against mono green, just traditionally one of the more poor matchups for Rakdos. I saw some interesting sideboard tech in the artifact slots to play a Damping Sphere and a Weathered Runestone. I think these are cool. Weathered Runestone hits Coco. It stops the sacrifice decks from doing the Cat Oven thing, and against mono green, it stops Storm the Festival. So I thought that was pretty cool. 1 Sky Sovereign because I live on the coast, so we're going to play a boat. And 1 Unlicensed Hearse for some additional graveyard hate, and vehicles come in real handy in this deck a lot of the time. So that's what we got. I'm setting the control weights aside for today, but I'm still gonna record this video using like my playover style. If you don't personally like that for the way like mid-range matches play through, definitely let me know in the feedback. But as always, before we get started, I'd like to remind you to like, comment, subscribe, follow us on social media. We're on Twitter and Instagram. We post pretty much every day at Team Primetime. So without further ado, I will see you in round 1. Here we are in game 1 of round 1. I lost the die roll here, and I'm starting off by getting Thoughtseize. Don't really know what that means. I do keep a hand with 3 lands that curves out really well for my lands to always be untapped. Sheoldred's Edict into Graveyard Trespasser probably is okay. Normally, you like removal spells when you're on the draw, but I don't claim to be an expert in what's keepable hands in Rakdos. I saw lands and spells, so I went for it. My opponent, Thoughtseize into Bloodtithe Harvester. I'm going to take the 2 here because I don't know what my opponent's going to do. Gets the Fable down, so I'm just going to use this time to get rid of the Bloodtithe Harvester. I could have used either of my removal spells there. I go for the Graveyard Trespasser, hit the Bloodtithe Harvester. I could have used the Stomp there on the Goblin Shaman, but it wasn't mana efficient there. I think one of the big things in mid-range decks is using your mana to the best of your ability every turn, and using Graveyard Trespasser there is just what would do it. My opponent plays a Kalitas. Kalitas is not a main deck card in red-black mid-range very often, so I thought that was weird. I'm going to attack with the Graveyard Trespasser, eat the Kalitas, and now I can stomp the Goblin Shaman. I'm just going to let my opponent go to their turn. I'm still kind of weirded out about the Kalitas main deck. I mean, maybe my opponent's doing it as a concession that mono green's very good, and Kalitas is obviously a good card in that matchup. But then my opponent gets down abrading my Graveyard Trespasser, pitching Kroxa. So I know there's a Kroxa incoming, and I'm not going to like that very much. My opponent has all the cards in Graveyard to escape it. Plus the Reflection here. So my opponent's going to escape Kroxa, and I'm going to discard Bloodtithe Harvester because I'm going to cast this Invoke Despair. So that's obviously the best play I could do here. My opponent can choose to sacrifice just the Reflection as a creature and not lose both things, but which is what they choose to do. So I draw a bunch of cards, notably only lands. So when my opponent attacks with this Kroxa here, I'm going to have to discard a land. But my opponent drawing a second card there does help me a little bit with that life total going to 7. I'm going to chump here. I don't know why I chump. I could have just gone to 10, but now my opponent having the Bankbuster online definitely stinks for me. I do top deck the removal spell though, and they're a long way from being able to escape this Kroxa again. My opponent draws, and if they draw again, they're going to take... Okay, so my opponent gets Sheoldred down. Do not love that. Because now my opponent, isn't going to really lose life when they activate Castle Locthwain. But now it's, I top deck my Shelly, which I love this point in watching Rakdos mirrors, because the way the triggers stack, theirs go on the stack, and then mine stacks. So they're going to lose my life before they gain it. So if we can time this right, we could get to a place where if I get my opponent's life total low enough, I can kill them before they gain the life. Opponent now top decks Fable here. I now have the ability to Kroxa escape Kroxa, which is pretty sweet. I'm definitely liking where I'm at with that. Getting 2 good threats on the board at the same time is very good. My opponent is going to be able to discard up to 2 and then draw 2 on their next turn. And then possibly draw with the Bankbuster, possibly draw with Castle Locthwain. So my opponent has a lot of draws in their future, but I've made them discard cards to get on to 4. So now my opponent is going to stabilize back at 4. Definitely we're in a weird spot here. My opponent discards a card, so they slide back to 4. Activates Bankbuster, still at 4. I think it's going to take them being forced to activate Castle Ardenvale here to... Okay, so they took 2 from the Ardenvale, and then I don't know if my opponent just didn't realize what was going to happen there, but they take 2 as part of the Castle Locthwain resolution, and then they're going to take 2 from Shelly. So I think they thought that they would stabilize from getting the Sheoldred life gain from the Castle Locthwain draw, which they did not. So that was game 1. Getting game 1 on the draw feels really good, especially I would think in the Rakdos mirror, since I will possibly get to be on the play for game 3, if we even go to a game 3. So let's talk about sideboarding in this matchup a little bit. You want to bring in the grindy threats, so like Sky Sovereign. I like Go Blank. I brought in 1 on the draw, both K commands and unlicensed Hearse. I saw Kroxa out of my opponent, so being able to hate their graveyard a little bit seems good. Then I can eat Graveyard Trespasser targets in response to them targeting them, so that also seems like it could be good. Things like cut. I thought the Misery Shadow wasn't very good. I cut my own Kroxa, and then I cut 3 Thoughtseizes on the draw. I would probably keep more of them on the play, so that I could potentially answer things that are problematic, like Fable and Mirror Breaker. Here we are for game 2 in this first round against Rakdos Mid. I have 2 lands. I'm on the draw, so I'm just going to believe I'm going to draw my Black Source, which I top deck. I go ahead and then just play it out there just in case I want to, be efficient and use Go for the Throat. I think here's probably a good time to stomp. Go ahead and get my my Bonecrusher Giant into exile so I can use it later. I'm set up really well here just to K command the Bankbuster and make them discard a card before I ever before they ever get to activate, which is pretty much ideal there. My opponent just immediately gets down Sheoldred, so I'm going to stop in my upkeep here and just go ahead and go for the throat Sheoldred. And then I can play a land, and drawing Den of the Bugbear at this point is kind of lame, but now that I've got 4 lands, I can play pretty much everything in the deck and then just play Den as a tap land. Drawing Bloodtithe there is really nice to have something to play side by side. I see a first Invoke Despair from my opponent, takes out my threat. Feels pretty bad, so I'm going to get down Bonecrusher Giant. Probably want to loot away Blood Crypt this turn, or save it for when I need to get Fatal Push active. A second Invoke Despair on back-to-back turns, so my opponent has spent 10 mana to draw 4 cards and deal, I think 9, yeah, like 9 damage to me. No, 8 damage to me. So I Fable into the Goblin Shaman. I'm glad I still have 2 lands because I can loot these away. Even though I'm not quite sure if I want to loot away Sokenzan. Here I could use the blood token to go ahead and trigger Revolt, but I think I'm better off here using Goblin Shaman to use a treasure and sack it. So I'm going to get the Fatal Push here. I believe I'll probably discard the second. Ooh, okay. So I kept the Fatal Push, discarded Sokenzan. Seems fair. My opponent's going to trade their Goblin Shaman for mine. I'm just going to put Shelly into play, and then hope we start getting some action off of this. My opponent's going to go to 15, and I got it into play in time for the Fable trigger, which feels really good. I could get my opponent to lose some life there. My opponent puts Kalitas into play. I am going to be able to kill this Kalitas with Sheoldred, with the Fatal Push if I need to. I actually didn't think about it, but I'm pretty sure the Fable, because it exiles itself and come back. I had Revolt. I just should have Fatal Pushed that Kalitas right there. That's looking back at these games, it's always really cool to realize what you did wrong. Here, I chose to not block, but I guess it wouldn't have mattered because my opponent would have been able to activate, sack the zombie, and it wouldn't have been a trade for me anyway. Get Sheoldred down. Man, I will comment on watching my opponent's plays throughout this game. So I've seen 2 Invoke Despairs. That means there's a lot of respect there, I think, for the Rakdos Midrange match. But seeing, main deck Kalitas still there, I mean, that's something I never expected to see. My opponent turned on Revolt for me, so I could, shoot the Fable. I'm probably not going to beat Fable copying Bonecrusher Giant at this point. Pitching the Sulfurous Springs, okay. Stomp the zombie, and now we just have 2 giants staring at each other. I choose to be the initiator here. I don't know if that was actually correct, but I guess I was more worried about my opponent having a removal spell for my giant and not really getting any value out of it. I'm just playing out my lands here. My opponent has Thoughtseizes in their deck, so there's no point in me just, not getting to a point where I can do something. My opponent Heartless acts my Bonecrusher Giant here. They're going to take 2, but they're going to get a zombie. They can sack the zombie, pump Kalitas, get bigger. I'm not going to win that race at this point, so this is a good time for me to scoop it up and start thinking about Game 3. In Game 3, I'll be on the play. I'm going to bring in Kroxa. I'm going to bring in the second Go Blank, and I'm going to bring in a Thoughtseize. So I'm going to have 2 in the main deck. I'm going to cut Liliana out of the Veil. I feel like as a good answer to Graveyard Trespasser, I like her on the draw. And I like kind of when my opponent is technically could be playing a card down, being on the play, Liliana just feels like a bigger advantage on the draw. I cut a Sheoldred's Edict. My opponent just seemed to put enough creatures on the board where the Edict effect didn't seem like it would be good. And I cut 1 Fatal Push. Whether I think that's right now is debatable, but I think it is okay. So, we'll see if I can put together a round 1 win in Game 3. Okay, so here we are with Game 3. Let's see if I can put it together here in round 1. I keep 2 lands on the play with Fatal Push, Unlicensed Hearse, Kroxa. I think this is okay. I see double Fable the Mirror Breaker, which I hope to be able to get online in back-to-back turns. I'm just going to hold up, Bonecrusher Giant for the stomp here, but my opponent just doesn't play anything out. So I'm going to stomp their face. I'm going to use my mana. Whether that's right or wrong, I'm not completely certain of. Play Fable because I'm going to be able to loot away this Kroxa, which seems like pretty good value. So my opponent continues to hit their land drops, puts Fable into play. So I'm definitely going to keep my Fatal Push here to push that Goblin Shaman. So I actually choose not to loot away any cards because I thought to just play Fatal Push, play second Fable, use that Fable to loot away Kroxa. I think that is an interesting line. I think maybe I was playing into my opponent, maybe having Graveyard Trespasser to follow up on. I think definitely I should discard at least 2 cards here. Okay, so yeah. So Sokenzan, Kroxa. Get in for 2. Seems like a good spot to be in. See, my opponent only has 3 cards. It has 3 cards going to drop to 4. So they're going to get to keep their 2 best before they exile here. But then I put Unlicensed Hearse into play. I think with 5 mana there, that was just the best thing I could have done. Looking back, I probably would have been better off playing Bonecrusher Giant and the Unlicensed Hearse and not using the Go Blank. Because now I really don't have anything to eat with the Unlicensed Hearse when I really just want to be growing my graveyard to escape my Kroxa. I have 2 lands up, so I can copy my reflection here. But that whole plan is blown apart by my opponent having Meat Hook Massacre. I was not playing around my opponent having sweepers. after game one in their deck, or even if they were sideboarded cards and bringing them in. I guess I don't think bringing in sweepers in this matchup is correct. So that's just what we went with. I escaped my Kroxa here though because I have enough cards in the graveyard now. My opponent and I, like, our time is neck and neck here, which I'm not sure if that's like actually indicative of how this matchup normally goes. And I just choose to get in there with my unlicensed turfs while I can. My opponent's drawn cards, gets the pilot, puts down a Bonecrusher Giant. I'm going to be able to stomp the pilot and put Sheoldred into play. And I can eat things up to 3. So I get the unlicensed turfs into play. I know I can trade with the Bonecrusher Giant here. But my opponent draws a card and top decks the Sky Sovereign. Man, my opponent getting boat right there, like Meat Hook Massacre into boat. I just don't know how I'm supposed to come back from that. And looking at like where our times are at now, put Graveyard Trespasser into play. I eat one of the other things. But then my opponent has a Graveyard Trespasser in front of my Graveyard Trespasser and can crew both vehicles now. My opponent does not have the card to discard to deal with the ward for Graveyard Trespasser, but I'm taking 10 here. I'm going to have to top deck one heck of a magic card to win here. And I power word kill the Graveyard Trespasser here and play my Bonecrusher Giant. But then, I look at the board and my opponent crews Sky Sovereign and just gets in there. And I don't get round one. I definitely misplayed a few places here in the Mire. This is the first time I've ever played the Rakdos Midrange Mire, I believe. So definitely could have done some things differently. Definitely got by cards I did not play around. But I mean, that's magic. So starting the league down 0-1. So let's see if I can rally behind this deck and pull it out. I'll see you in round 2. Here we are for round 2. I lost the die roll again. So let's see how this plays out. On the draw, I have the lands that make both my colors. I have 3 2-drops, so I think I'm good here. My opponent starts on Swamp Cauldron Familiar. Now, historically, from what I've been told, Sacrifice is not a very good matchup for Rakdos. So I decide it's probably for the best that I deploy some blockers. So I get the Bloodtithe Harvester down just so my opponent can't profitably attack into me. But then my opponent fatal pushes and just keeps getting in there. My opponent now has 3 creatures down. Liliana the Veil is not going to get me very far in this matchup, so I think the plan here is to loot this away. Cauldron Familiar, Witch's Oven. I don't have any way to deal with an artifact in game 1, and I don't have a really solid plan besides block their stuff. I think if I find my Misery Shadow, I can stop these Cauldron Familiars, but I have to get there. What really stinks is these Witch's Ovens very much blank my removal. Like, I can't just target a creature and kill it because they're just going to sacrifice it to the Witch's Oven and get value, and that just stinks. But Sheoldred here can kind of stabilize me. Then my opponent using Castle Locthwain kind of helps me stay in the game here. And I can block one of these Cauldron Familiars, so I'll comfortably go to 10. When they bring the cat back, obviously I won't be at 10, but I'm going to go back to 12. I have Sheoldred on board, so I feel pretty good here playing a Reckoner's Bankbuster and drawing. If my opponent goes to remove Sheoldred, then I can just draw, gain life, at least while I still have her. And I have 2 blockers, so the cats aren't getting in. So I feel like here I have a comfortable spot to sit and just play for a while, but my opponent puts Mayhem Devil into play. So the way I understand it here is now my opponent has sacrifice food for Cauldron Familiar, sacrifice food for Cauldron Familiar, sacrifice Cauldron Familiars twice. My opponent has 6, 7 sacrifice triggers, I believe, with the last food they could sacrifice using their lands. So my opponent's going to be able to kill the Sheoldred here. So with the last damage on the stack, I'm going to activate Reckoner Bankbuster here, and I'm going to draw a card. I draw another Bonecrusher Giant. Isn't going to get me, I think, very far here. But I'm stabilized at 11. Something that I'll just have you note, and something that I start thinking about in this game as we get to this point, I am like 5 minutes ahead of my opponent on the clock. And sacrifice, especially at this point in the game, I think it's going to take a little while to close out. So it's not how it always plays out in real life, but my opponent's chewing up the clock. So you got to get your play points. I'm going to milk this for what it is, and we're going to see if my opponent, closes out in a reasonable amount of time. But me still having, good clock management, I feel pretty good. I still have blockers. These Bonecrusher Giants just feel so bad because I can't stomp anything because if my opponent fades the stomp or the Witch's Oven, then I don't get the Bonecrusher, so I've just got to play them out. But I do have Sheoldred, and Sheoldred's done a lot to just like level out this game for me. So my opponent's doing their thing. I think a lot of this game is my opponent doing their thing, drawing cards, losing life, but gaining life with Cauldron Familiar. They take my Sheoldred. They do get to untap my Sheoldred with Furnace Rains, so that stinks. I'm not really used to seeing Furnace Rains in the main deck for this deck, but they have it there. I do block so I don't take any more damage, and they sacrifice my Sheoldred, so I don't get any good use out of that. My opponent here, taking the steps. I think the way this game goes, I'm trying to remember how it went. I mean, my opponent obviously has a lot going on. So at this point, they Fatal Push, and they're getting in for 2. My opponent has sacrificed the cats. I'll be down to 5 at this point. I think if my opponent just had a Mayhem Devil, the game would be over. So put the Bonecrusher Giant to play. We're going to Fatal Push here. I'm going to go down to 5 here. I get my last draw step with the Reckoner Bankbuster here. I think there's 1 counter. This is really the nail in the coffin here. My opponent, takes my Bonecrusher Giant, so I'm going to make the pilot to try to chump my Bonecrusher Giant. My draw was Hive with the Eye Tyrant, which not very good at this point in the game. But my opponent forgot to sacrifice the Bonecrusher Giant. But my opponent sacks here, puts me to 1, and then the game's going to be over on the next turn. But this is the important thing to take note of in this game. My opponent has used 15 minutes of the clock to win game 1. And, I've only, I guess you could say I only used about 9 minutes to lose. So if my opponent took 15 minutes to win game 1, if I'm just efficient and can keep the game, kind of close and grind out in a few spots, my opponent probably can't win this match. So I'm bringing in 2 Go Blanks, Weathered Runestone, because I said it was going to be good, Unlicensed Hearse, Sky Sovereign, and Kolaghan's Commands. The Kolaghan's Commands I know are good. Sky Sovereign, I kind of just choose to bring it in because this is still like a Rakdos Midrange style match, so Sky Sovereign seemed like it was going to be good. Cutting a Fatal Push, because oftentimes it's not going to do anything I need it to do. Cutting 3 Thoughtseizes. My opponents are probably going to cut down on some of their like duress type effects. I'm taking out a Sheoldred's Edict and Liliana the Veil. Edict effects just aren't going to be very good here. And 1 power word kill because dadgummit, that Mayhem Devil certainly is a devil. So power word kill not going to be very good. But we'll see how game 2 goes. I know I have a game plan. I have a path forward. We'll see how the game plays out. Okay, so here we are on the play for game 2. I have Bonecrusher Giant, Bankbuster, Dreadbore. I feel like this is a pretty good opening hand. My opponent starts on Cauldron Familiar, so I'm just going to put the Bankbuster down. I think this seems like a reasonable spot. If my opponent maybe plays Oven here, then I get to use K-Command. But my opponent goes Cauldron Familiar into Deadly Dispute to draw some cards, and then my opponent Thoughtseizes my Trespasser. That really stinks because I would have really liked to Graveyard Trespasser and exile that Cauldron Familiar, but instead I got to do my favorite thing that Reckoner Bankbuster does, and it turns every one of my creatures into a hasty 4/4. I'm definitely not mad about that. I have the boat here. I think we're blocking and setting up to use K-Command or just draw a card. I think probably just drawing a card is fine. I'm going to block here. It just seems easy to do that. My opponent has Revolt. Now they have a Mayhem Devil. Can sack the treasure and Bonecrusher's gone. And then Unlucky Witness. I kind of hope to draw Fatal Push off that Bankbuster activation, but it didn't get there. I do get the Dreadbore, the Mayhem Devil, but even better, I can Sky Sovereign and kill the Mayhem Devil. I could have Dreadbored and held up K-Command to use later, but I think just getting the boat into play is good. Now any creature I play gets into play, Cruise Boat, and just kind of reins in on there. My opponent has already used like up another 5 minutes here, so I'm just going to rebuy my Bonecrusher Giant, and I killed the yeah. So getting Bonecrusher Giant allows me to stomp later and then replay a creature, which seems pretty good here. I make the pilot to crew the Sky Sovereign. My opponent just sacks the target there for the damage. I'm getting him for 6. My opponent's at 7. I have critters. I just play another Bankbuster. I'm just going to try to draw cards here. My opponent takes out my pilot. Ooh, okay, Fable. So my opponent has Cauldron Familiars they can bring back. My opponent could sack the Goblin Shaman to bring back both Cauldron Familiars this turn if they wanted. Definitely, so I stomp my opponent and just put Bonecrusher Giant into play here. We're going to crew a Sky Sovereign, and we're going to try to get in there. My opponent can gain life. I think my opponent can go up to 7. Yeah, my opponent can go up to 7 here to not die to the Sky Sovereign. Oh, okay, but they can crack the food instead to gain more. So my opponent's at 9, which is fine. Dreadbore the kitty, while they can't sacrifice it to bring it back. And my opponents also, notably, have no creatures to go with the oven. My opponent's going to discard 2 cards. Okay, my opponent discards 1 card. Okay, Mayhem Devil. And my opponent, second Mayhem Devil. That is not great. Okay, I'm going to draw a card here. It's a land, not what I wanted. Okay, Misery Shadow. That definitely stops any cat oven shenanigans. Bloodtithe Harvester into play. Bloodtithe Harvester into play. I think I just play up Misery Shadow here, right? And then I pump it once. Okay, so my opponent runs out of time. I really was taking game actions there that would lead to my opponent having to respond and lose time. But let's think out what I was doing here, right? So I was playing the first creature that I knew could crew the Sky Sovereign. And my opponent has, let's think here, could sacrifice a Mayhem Devil, have 2 damage to make a food token. Okay, alright, yep, so it's 2 damage, make a food, bring in a cat, that's a sack, sack treasure, sack blood. So my opponent, I think, could have all 5 damage for the Sky Sovereign. Cool. But I set up to where I could crew the both Bankbusters and the Sky Sovereign. So I was swinging in with everything here. So I think even if my opponent was able to stop me, like they were going to have nothing left on board, I was still going to have 2 Bloodtithe Harvesters and a Misery Shadow. This is a pretty good spot to be in. It feels good to win a match that's usually pretty bad. But no, I think so. Now we're 1-1. We're in the middle ground, and now we're going to try to go positive. I'll see you in round 3. Friends, Romans, countrymen, we're here for round 3 with Rakdos Mid. I win the die roll here. Let's see how it plays out. I send back the first hand. I have 3 lands that come into play, 1, 2, 3 untapped. I have a Fatal Push on 1, and my opponent starts Lair of the Hydra, Elvish Mystic. This could be boats, or this could be mono green. Probably both very bad for me. They don't reveal Gigantha, so it's definitely not boats. But then my opponent plays Oath of Nissa. Definitely know this is mono green. And both matchups would have been pretty bad for me as Rakdos. But we're gonna play it and see how it goes. I draw another Fatal Push if they had played Dork there. Getting Fable here seems pretty good. I don't actually think I loot away anything. Let's see, is this an Old Growth? Okay, this is Kiora. Okay, not so bad about being Kiora. My opponent doesn't untap a land, which means they don't have another elf in hand. I'll put back I'll put a second Sheoldred away. That seems fine. So make a treasure, and I think definitely just to get my clock started here, I'm gonna put Sheoldred into play. I sack the treasure token, not because I'm thinking about I can build up mana. I sack the treasure because if my opponent plays Karn, I can't use my treasures anymore. So I think that's correct. And if that's not right, tell me in the comments if I'm doing that wrong. But now I have Goblin Shaman and Sheoldred. I'm going to make the treasure here to just Fatal Push the Old Growth Troll. They get to, attach it to a land. Good business for them, I guess. But I'm getting in for 6. And then they're going to take 2 every turn. My opponent has no way, maybe outside of a cityscape leveler, to get rid of Sheoldred in game one. And my opponent just puts an old growth troll into play. My opponent's going to draw a card. Go to 4. My opponent storms the festival. Okay, this is a good setup here, because if my opponent gets a creature like Cavalier of Thorns into play, they're going to draw a card. I stomp them to put them at 2. They draw a card off the cav. They're going to go to 0. And praise be, I got game 1. I got game 1 without Thoughtseizing my opponent. That feels really good. And then, you know, I got 2 more shots to get that second game in this match. Sideboard. So I bring in Duresses, Extinction Events, Damping Sphere. I didn't talk about it in the intro. Damping Sphere shutting off Nykthos feels pretty good. And Weathered Runestone, you know, doing the Storm the Festival thing like I had talked about. I think that's pretty decent. Take out the Reckoner Bankbuster is not the matchup for that. My opponent brings in Karn. I mean, my opponent doesn't bring in Karn. My opponent doesn't bring in anything. They're a Karn deck. But shuts off Bankbuster, not very good. I don't think Kroxa is really what I'm looking for. Not Liliana of the Veil. My opponent's going to have enough creatures that the Edict's not very good. I take out Invoke Despair. My opponent's just going to have options for the sacrifice effect. So it's just not really what I want. I could get a 3-for-1 out of the card because, you know, they have enchantments, planeswalkers, and creatures. But I didn't think it was where I want to be. And I took out the Sheoldred's Edict. I figured I just want to, like, you know, hand hate the heck out of my opponent and then just play hate pieces and hope I get game 2. And here we are for game 2 of match 3. I'm going to be on the draw here. Let's see what these hands look like. Oh, no, that's a 6-lander. Oh, no, I mulligan the 6-lander to get another 6-lander. I'll put 1 back. I have Bloodtithe Harvester. I will draw well, and I can cast anything I draw. But then I draw the 6th land. Not very good. Maybe I should have mulliganed to 5, but I don't know. Andre Mangucci, you know, said just don't mulligan, so I just don't. But then, you know, drawing Fable the Mirror Breaker, feel very good. You know, I'm going to get to loot away some of these lands. I feel pretty awesome about that. My opponent puts Karn the Great Creator into play. Blood token instantly useless, but because they had to tap the Elvish Mystic to get it, to get the Stonebrain here, I'm just going to be able to attack the Karn. So they're not going to just be able to Karn again and play Stonebrain. What's unfortunate here is my opponent's going to be able to Stonebrain and I assume name Sheoldred. Sheoldred is the name. I'm going to get the draw card. I do like that. I draw another land. Definitely don't like that. But, oh my gosh, how many more lands can come off the deck? So I put away 2 things. I have a Go for the Throat and a Thoughtseize. You know, we're getting better here. I have a treasure token I can use. I have a blood token I can use to get rid of one of these lands. Definitely going to take Storm the Festival here. I know if my opponent puts Cavalier of Thorns into play, I can Go for the Throat with the Cav trigger on the stack, which means they're not really going to get anything back. They just mill over it again. My opponent, you know, just puts a land into play, gets an Elvish Mystic. Feels good for them, I guess. I'm going to use this blood token, get one of these dang lands out of my hand. Fatal Push, okay. Graveyard Trespasser, we're going to get to eat this Storm the Festival, so they're never going to get to flash it back. I like the way this basically 6-land opening hand is working out here. So yeah, we're just going to Graveyard Trespasser, eat that up. We could be mana efficient here and, you know, maybe just Fatal Push. But I think the plan here was to save my treasure tokens in case I needed Revolt. Oh man, Haywire Might. Can get the Haywire Might, my Reflection. Okay, this is what's weird. Okay, never mind. Haywire Might specifically says, I think it has to be non-creature. So the fact that it's flipped means they can't. So it got Besaged. Okay, my opponent, though, has tapped out, and my opponent failed to do the math step. My opponent's at 12. Graveyard Trespasser, that's 3. Trigger, hit Cavalier Thorns, 4. Goblin Shaman gets me to 6. And then activate Hive, we're at 9. And 3 more on the Bloodtithe Harvester, and bang, we're at 12. We got mono green at 2-0. Eat your heart out. We're 2-1. We're going to round 4. I'll see you in that one. All right, we are on the winning die roll train now. Finally got my second die roll win here in round 4. Let's see what we're up against here. All right, I got 3 lands that are all going to come into play, you know, pretty painlessly. This seems pretty good. I can go tap Blood Crypt into Blackcleave Cliffs. I see Sparta's Headquarters. I have seen that Patrick Wu has started putting Spar's headquarters in the Lotus combo deck, not Lotus combo, Lotus control deck. So I assume that's what I'm up against. Cycle Shark Typhoon for nothing, just going to draw a card, but getting in there for 3 with the Bloodtithe Harvester. I choose to not play anything because I know the only counterspell my opponent's going to have is Drury Disruption. So I'm just playing thinking my opponent's going to force spike me the whole game. That's just how I want to play. So I'm Thoughtseizing here. My opponent gets out the Wandering Emperor. That's going to have to be fine. Going to take Teferi here. I don't currently have a way to deal with 2 Planeswalkers on board. So Teferi's going to be it. Definitely just send both at the Wandering Emperor because there's no way they can keep the Wandering Emperor on board after that. My opponent puts Strict Proctor into play. Still has 2 mana. I forget. I don't think my opponent revealed anything that I'm worried about here. But I'll swing in with the Bloodtithe Harvester. My opponent will, chump block here, keep their life total nice and high. Let's just put Bonecrusher Giant into play. I knew my opponent had for Tola card, which was Doomscar. So I didn't want to put a Sheoldred out yet, but now I will. So my opponent Memory Deluges, not a card draw, doesn't trigger Sheoldred. But, getting some Sheoldred triggers in here. I feel like Sheoldred's probably my path forward to win this game. Strict Proctoring, another Lotus Field. A tale as old as time here for my opponent. My opponent has 6 mana available. So my opponent can cycle into a 4/4 Shark, which is pretty good. Definitely pretty good. More importantly, my opponent can use Discontinuity as a counter spell that just ends my turn. So my opponent, chumps here. Doesn't do anything here. Just going to flash back another Memory Deluge. Okay, so I have Sheoldred and a Misery Shadow on board. Hopefully a decent clock. With my opponent Doomscars again. Let's see here. Just trying to land. So I think we're just putting Sheoldred back out. This is the first example of Discontinuity being a counterspell. It just ends my turn. It's like Render Silent, but with more flavor text, I guess. But now my opponent put Shark Typhoon into play. I'm probably not beating Shark Typhoon. I remember I left my opponent with this Shark Typhoon because I had Invoke Despair. So I knew I had an answer to an enchantment. But my opponent goes to my upkeep and discontinuities. So my opponent has a 6/6, and I don't get to use this Invoke Despair. Feels bad. My opponent, Memory Deluges, makes a 4/4. I'm rapidly losing my ability to answer this board state. Okay, Teferi, plussing, untapping both Lotus Fields, flashing back, like the ability to flash back. Memory Deluge is dope. Also, just untapping the 2 Lotus Fields gives them the discontinuity. So here I'm going to be able to Invoke Despair. I will get the smallest Shark, the Shark Typhoon, and the Teferi. But my opponent still has 11 points of damage here. And Memory Deluges, I'm not sure what they find. But I look at my opponent having 11. I know I'm not going to be able to deal with 2 Sharks probably with just a Bonecrusher Giant. More importantly, they're going to activate this Hall of Storm Giant. So my opponent's going to have 13, 18 points of damage, and there's nothing little me can do about it. But I have a ton of good sideboard cards for this matchup. I feel like the trick to Rakdos is if people are playing a lot of control, Rakdos does feel good. And I think because this Lotus control deck does need a lot of pieces to kind of set up and get moving, I feel like Rakdos is probably even better into that. So sideboard from the play. I'm cutting all the Fatal Pushes. That's what I used to do playing Dimir Control in this matchup. So I just don't want them. Taking out a Power Word kill. My opponent should not have any way to make Angels. So the Power Word kill probably would have been fine. But targeted removal against Dream Trawlers, not very good. So that was probably my reason for cutting that. And cutting the Graveyard Trespassers, I just didn't think it's the threat I wanted in this matchup. Even though against control, it is usually the go-to threat. My opponent's going to have Doomscars. So I play a 3-mana threat. My opponent uses a 3-mana board wipe. It's not the kind of battle I want to get into. The war axis I do want to fight on, bringing in 2 Duresses, 2 Go Blanks, Noxious Grasp for the Planeswalkers. Damping Sphere now has text against a control deck. So that feels pretty sweet. Going to try to turn off some Lotus Fields with that. And I'm bringing in the Boat. Boat go brrr against control sometimes. So, yeah, we're going to play that. And let's hope we can do the reverse sweep here. I'm already down like almost 2 minutes. So I don't know. Let's play efficient and try to get these last two. And here we are for game 2 of this round 4. Let's see if I can being down 2 minutes. Let's see how we go here. I have a tapped Castle Locthwain. That's fine. I have Duress. I have Go Blank. I feel like I'm in a good spot. 2 Fable and Mirror Breakers. Kind of build my hand up seems good. I know I'm going to have an untapped third land. That's sweet. My opponent's hand has a Teferi and a Dream Trawler in it, so nothing I'm really that worried about. So I take the Impulse, because my opponent's going to need to find some mid-game stuff to do. My opponent for total card, that's fine. So we're setting up, making a little more mana here. My opponent has 5 cards, so I'm not in a spot to Go Blank and Thoughtseize, even though I like the play pattern of Go Blank into Thoughtseize, and that's maybe what I could have done there. But that's not what I chose to fire off. Drew a card there, got a Bloodtithe Harvester. I'm now in a spot where I could Go Blank and then use the Thoughtseize. And so I've left my opponent with a Hollowed Fountain. So there's the Doomscar cleaning up the board. But I got the Bankbuster. And like I said earlier, Bankbuster turns all my creatures into hasty 4/4s. So that's what we're into here. Or I guess we're drawing cards. I mean, I think at this point I've basically got my opponent covered on the card advantage front here. But Wandering Emperor, definitely gonna make a 2/2 to chump. Okay, that's fair. Now I just get to stomp the Wandering Emperor, so that seems pretty good. I'm gonna be able to draw here on the end step here, make the Pilot. So we're doing good. Taking out Teferi. With all these vehicles, I'm not too concerned about the Doomscar. But I guess no, never mind. I took the Doomscar. Because if they resolved the Teferi, I had the Sheoldred's Edict. Duh. But yeah, so I have my opponent's at 12. I have Bankbuster. I have Thoughtseize. See, my opponent just has Lotus Field, so I'm not worried about anything here. I'm going to crew 2 Bankbusters and get in. Put my opponent at 4, and we're going to see if I can ride this one out. My opponent impulses. Guess finds nothing. My opponent has 4 mana. My opponent needs to have land in hand that doesn't deal damage and Doomscar. And I've already seen 2 Doomscars here, so I think we're good. Okay, great. So we got game 2. Going into game 3, looking at my board here, I just ran back the exact same board plan. So let's see what game 3 goes. I am down 5 minutes though. I turned my 2-minute deficit into a 5-minute deficit. So I'm gonna need to play clean. I'm gonna need to play fast, and maybe get set to 3-1 so the kids will eat. Pay for this league. Here we are for game 3 of round 4 on the draw against Lotus Control. Let's see what this opening hand looks like. I open up Duress and Go Blank and lands that come into play on tap. Seems pretty good. And top deck the Thoughtseize. My opponent just has Strict Proctors and a bunch of lands. Good for them, I guess. Strict Proctor, okay. I mean, that can do stuff at some point, I guess. I'm going to wait. I want to let my opponent get a couple of draw steps in and then start firing off these anti spells when they might have more stuff. Take the Discontinuity. Seems fine. This is a good opportunity for me to play the Blood Crypt tapped. Not really sweating what my opponent might have here. And just putting the Fable down, in case my opponent were to have a counter spell. And okay, so there's the Lotus Field. They have it there, but I have the Damping Sphere. Mwahaha. Definitely, I'm going to have to sequence correctly here. I think we're going to pitch both lands. So I have Thoughtseize and Damping Sphere. It's pretty good. My opponent, Ganjo's here. My opponent's down 2 cards. So this lets me Go Blank and wipe out the rest of their hand. And then I'm just going to put down a Damping Sphere. So now they have a land that doesn't tap for more than 1 mana. And even better, it's colorless. So they actually, I think, need a second white source for Castle Ardenvale that they don't have. I pay for the Strict Proctor on my Bloodtithe Harvester. I actually wasn't thinking about the Strict Proctor when I played my Bloodtithe Harvester. But we got stuff in play here. My opponent's drawn a couple of cards. And then Doomscar is my board away. But my opponent just used their board wipe, and now I have Sheoldred. And I Thoughtseize, paying an extra for the Damping Sphere there. So my opponent impulses, finds a card. I don't know what they took. I'm very interested here. I'm firing up the Hive, though. We're getting in there. Take the discontinuity. I don't think my opponent has a way to buy back things. Opponent impulses again. I feel like I'm against actual Lotus control, like Lotus combo when I see that many impulses. I do think it's a good add to the control deck. It definitely adds to the consistency. But my opponent's gone through a few draw steps and some impulses. Doesn't have an answer to Sheoldred and can't deal with me attacking for 7 and then taking another 2. So the kid's 8. We are 3-1 going into round 5. You know, I feel pretty good about that. We've had a diversity of matches. So cool. Let's see we wrap it up in round 5. Maybe get to 4-1. Maybe just get to 3-2. But you'll have to check round 5 to find out. Here we are in round 5 of our Rakdos Midrange League. Going into it 3-1. I have won the die roll. 3-2 on die rolls. Let's see if I finish better than 3-2 in the league. Let's see how we go here. My opening hand, I'd say it looks like a banger. I have all untapped lands. I have Misery Shadow to put a clock together. My opponent mulligans to 5 on the draw. If I had Thoughtseize, it'd be pretty decent. I see Hollowed Fountain, so it could be Spirits. It could be Control. Doesn't really tell me a whole lot. The Pathway makes me think it's the Lotus control deck again. But I know my opponent doesn't really have any removal spells here. But I don't choose to just pump the Misery Shadow. My opponent foretold a card. It could be Behold, it could be Doomscar. But after seeing that my opponent has foretold the Doom, like possibly a Doomscar, I've decided I'm going to pump as much into this Misery Shadow as I possibly can and establish a clock. So I'm swinging for 6. My opponent does not fire off Doomscar here. I think I'm not going to pump anything into the Misery Shadow here in case my opponent has Wandering Emperor here for this turn. Because that would have been a mistake. But it's just the Cycled Shark that I to get a 2-2. That's fine. I'm just going to push the Shark token right here. Blood away the Urborg. I don't want to give my opponent black mana. My opponent cycles makes a 3-3. Okay. So my opponent blocks the Bloodtithe Harvester. I'm just going to pump everything into the Misery Shadow. So my opponent's at 3. And I have the Sokenzan that can give me 2 more points of damage if my opponent doesn't do anything. My opponent didn't do anything on their turn. I'm a Thoughtseize. What do you got? It's just a Jawari Disruption. So I feel like I go for personal style points here. My opponent has no possible way in their hand. Well, I guess until they cycle into an Aganjo. So, dang. So, my opponents are at 1. Plays the Hollow Storm Giants. This is my fine opportunity to just swing for 2. I could fire up the Din here, but if my opponent has the answers to everything, I want to put Sheoldred into play. Oh, my opponent has Discontinuity, and this is where I get punished. It happens to me every time, where I don't play my land in my pre-combat main phase. It just gets me. Okay, but here, we're just going to play the Fable. I'm just going to put a 2-2. I mean, it's a threat. I'll play Bloodtithe Harvester. My opponent, Odawara, is the Shaman. I knew my opponent had the Odawara. I'm pretty sure I knew my opponent had the Aganjo too, and I just didn't play around that. But, my opponent just continues to pass. My opponent can use Hall of Storm Giant here to chump. Discontinuities again. So my opponent has discontinuited several times for no real gain here. When my opponent's down to 1 card in hand, I just have a Bloodtithe Harvester. My opponent does not have the 6 mana necessary to activate Hall of Storm Giants. But I drew Kroxa off the loot here on the Fable, so I know that I can Kroxa, escape Kroxa. Even if my opponent somehow magically has an answer to my Bloodtithe Harvester, I don't think they have an answer to me double casting a Kroxa. So we got game 1. The sideboard is going to be just like it was in the 4th match, right? So we're bringing in Noxious Grass, Duresses, Go Blanks, Damping Sphere, Sky Sovereign, cutting the Graveyard Trespassers, the Fatal Pushes, and the Power Word Kills. It worked in round 4. It's got to work in round 5. I'll catch you in game 2 where we're on the draw. Here we are for game 2, round 5. Trying to close out the 4-1 here. I'm on the draw, and I open up 2 lands, Duress, Thoughtseize, Kroxa, Bankbuster, Bloodtithe Harvester. I draw another Thoughtseize, so we're just gonna keep firing off. I'm gonna take the Droid Disruption just to take my opponent off of a land drop. I should have probably taken Behold the Multiverse and played around the Droid Disruption the rest of the game, because my opponent got to foretell the Behold the Multiverse, which, I assume, with the amount of turns this game will take, eventually they will get to cast that card. I'm putting the Bankbuster into play. This is probably where my opponent resolves the Behold. At some point, I will wait for my opponent to get down to 2 cards and hope to fire up this Go Blank. Effectively, though, Hingegate Pathway. Okay, so knowing that after I take the Dream Trawler and my opponent just has 2 pathways in hand, I know they're going to take 3 off the Kroxa, so I just fire it off. Before the Kroxa sacrifices, you have to use it to crew the Bankbuster. So it definitely did that, get in for 4. So that was a 7-point swing there. So we got Bloodtithe Harvester. I choose not to crew the Bankbuster. I want to draw a card here. My opponent scries. Keeps 1 on top. What could that top card be? Definitely not the land that I knew they had in their hand. So my opponent has a card. It could be Discontinuity. I wasn't playing around Discontinuity by not playing that Swamp. I tell you what, though. So I'm just going to put Fable into play. My opponent Discontinuities. So if they get the counterspell, I'm going to be able to draw on their turn. Opponent to Fairies. I have the Noxious Grasp, though. So I definitely feel good about that. My opponent is going to draw a card and have 4. Okay, so my opponent drew a card. They had an Odawara, so they just have 4 lands on their turn with nothing to do. So I'm just going to fire up Hive, and I'm going to take this opportunity to knock out the Memory Deluge. I actually missed a point of damage here by not crewing the Bankbuster. If I were just going to swing with the Bloodtithe Harvester, I should have swung with the Bankbuster. Here I go for the Thoughtseize. Opponent puts down Wandering Emperor. That's fine. So I whiff into the Thoughtseize. We're going to escape Kroxa here. My opponent's going to take 1. I can crew the Bankbuster. And if I attack with the Bankbuster and the Bloodtithe Harvester, my opponent can exile one of them, gain 2 up to 3. And then I hit him for 3 or 4. And bangarang, we got the 4-1. I'll catch you in the wrap-up. This deck was actually kind of sweet. Like, I see why people like it. There's a lot of agency. I mean, with so much of the deck being made up of 1s, 2s, and 3s, I feel like there's a lot of permutations of what you can do on any given turn. You get treasures to ramp. I mean, you have blood tokens to kind of shape your hand. It's a lot of fun. I like it. Things that you could change if you're into that. You can cut Kroxa, play Mutavaults. I've seen people do that. I've seen people play Duresses in the main deck. I mean, if you are in a meta where you think that's very good, definitely you can go with that. Maybe, other like sideboard cards to kind of consider. In the Rakdos Mire in round 1, I feel like my opponent drew their Reckoner Bankbusters and I did not, so maybe having 1 more is good. Having access to some kind of shatter effect in the main deck could have been good. So in a Braid, or maybe playing a K command in the main deck. The 3 Sheoldreds were good. I don't like, my opponent was on Kalitas, and I get the point there. But if they didn't also, I wonder if they also hedged 3 Sheoldreds and a Kalitas. I don't know. I don't know my opponent's deck. But the 3 Sheoldreds at 4 felt like enough. Invoke Despair was kind of clunky. Like the one matchup where I felt like it was actually could have been impactful. I held it for too long and then it wasn't. So maybe I was supposed to fire it off at just some point willy-nilly and get my deal 6, draw 3. I don't know. I just kind of feel like the point of this, especially this shell, is to get as much value out of your cards as possible. Dreadbore I like. I've seen lists that completely cut Dreadbore, but I feel like just having that unconditional, let me kill this target planeswalker or creature, just feels good. Power word kill, I mean, if you're seeing a lot of angels, cut the card. Go for the 3rd. I didn't see any boats or gear hulks, so go for the 3rd. Felt good. Misery Shadow, I think it's definitely there mostly for the mono green matchup. And I did play against mono green, but I did not see the Shadow. But I mean, there's just one, right? Like this, these are the flex slots. Liliana the Veil, I don't know, man. I'm not playing some black-based mid-range deck and not playing Reed Duke's girlfriend. Like, I have more respect than that. But no, man, I think that's my take. I mean, I got a 4-1. I mean, as much as I've joked about this deck just being, a mid deck, that, to be successful with this deck, I think takes very good players, and I do not claim to be one. So I have not like taken this to an RCQ, like I probably won't. And like I think the people who've sunk a lot of time into it, like this deck is very rewarding. But I could see your brain going to mush in a long tournament playing it. Like I actually think for me, it was harder than Control because like you have to figure out. I guess I'm better at deciding how I want to answer things than deciding how I want to ask the question. I guess that's the way to put it. But no, I hope you found this league enjoyable. You know, I enjoyed getting a 4-1. I opened 5 chests that had absolutely nothing in them. One of them had 45 play points. So I ended up cashing in enough to pay for 2 leagues. That's kind of sweet. But yeah, that's where I'm at. Once again, I'm Mark with Team Primetime. I hope you like, comment, subscribe. I hope you watch and enjoy my other teammates' content. It's very good. And we're winding down Pioneer season, so you're gonna slowly watch us transition to do some more modern stuff. I'd actually like to make a little Pauper content, so y'all maybe watch out that my next one might be Pauper. But yeah, comment what you thought about the deck. Maybe comment your favorite Pauper deck, and maybe that'll be my next video. But yeah, find us on Twitter and Instagram. Find us in the real life, and I hope I see y'all. So be safe and love y'all. Take care.